They called me the caterer at my daughter-in-law's wedding, the one I paid for down to the last rose petal. I stood there, in a dress I'd saved for months to buy, watching them laugh through a crack in the kitchen door. I didn't say a word. Not yet. I stayed quiet, but not because I had no choice. I was waiting. Welcome to the Betrayal Revenge channel, where stories come alive through voices you've never heard told this way before. Stay with us, because every story deserves its truth. It all began on a spring morning, in a garden that was never mine. Something felt wrong the moment I stepped onto the gravel path. I couldn't put my finger on it, not at first. The air was sweet with jasmine, the kind that clings to your skin like a promise. The garden stretched out before me, a vision of white roses and fairy lights, tables draped in linen so soft it looked like it might float away. It was perfect. Too perfect, maybe, like a painting I'd paid for but wasn't allowed to touch. I adjusted the strap of my chiffon dress, pale blue, the one I'd chosen because it felt like me. Quiet, elegant, unassuming. The hem brushed against my ankles as I walked, catching the faint dust of the path. My heels sank slightly into the earth, and I steadied myself, clutching my purse a little tighter. I was early. I always was. Months of planning, wiring payments, signing contracts, it all led to this day. My son's wedding. Brian's wedding. I'd paid for every detail, from the hand-stitched napkins to the string quartet warming up under a pergola. I thought I'd feel something. Pride maybe, joy. But standing there, alone, with the morning sun glinting off crystal glassware, I felt like a guest who'd wandered into the wrong party. "Excuse me, ma'am?" A young man in a black vest appeared, his clipboard pressed against his chest like a shield. His eyes flicked over me, quick, assessing. "You're with the catering team, right? The kitchen setup's around back." I froze. My mouth opened, but no words came. Catering team? The words hung in the air, sharp, like the sting of a paper cut. I wanted to laugh, to correct him, to say, "No, I'm Evelyn, the mother of the groom. I paid for this." But his gaze was already drifting past me, scanning for someone more important. My throat tightened. "No, I started, but he was already turning away, waving me toward a gravel trail that curved behind the main garden. "It's just through there," he said over his shoulder. "They're expecting you." I stood there, rooted, as he disappeared into the hum of setup crews. The breeze tugged at my hair, loosening a strand I'd spent an hour pinning back. I could still hear the quartet, their notes floating over the hedges, soft and mournful. My fingers brushed the pearl clasp of my purse, cool against my skin. Catering team. The words echoed, burrowing into me. I'd written checks for 6 figures, spent nights on the phone with florists, argued with vendors about delivery times. And yet, here I was, mistaken for hired help. I followed the path, not because I wanted to, but because my feet moved before my mind caught up. The gravel crunched under my heels, each step a small betrayal. The trail led to a makeshift kitchen tent, tucked behind a row of manicured hedges. The air changed as I approached, less jasmine, more grease and damp canvas. A faint whiff of garbage lingered, probably from a dumpster hidden nearby. The tent flaps were pinned open, revealing stainless steel tables cluttered with trays, a stack of plastic crates, and a woman in a hairnet shouting about ice deliveries. I stopped just outside, my dress catching on a stray branch. The fabric snagged, and I winced, picturing the tiny tear I wouldn't be able to fix. Inside the tent, a server glanced at me, her hands full of silverware. "You here for setup?" she asked, barely pausing. "No," I said, my voice quieter than I meant. I'm the mother of the groom." She blinked, then nodded like it didn't matter. "Oh, okay. Well, they're still setting up out front. You can wait here if you want." She gestured vaguely toward a folding chair in the corner, next to a pile of empty produce boxes. The chair was metal, rusted at the edges, with a thin cushion that sagged in the middle. "Wait here." The words landed like a slap, soft but deliberate. I looked at the chair, then back at the garden beyond the hedges. I could see glimpses of it, white chairs being arranged in neat rows, a floral arch swaying gently in the breeze. My floral arch, my chairs, my son's wedding. And yet I was here, in the shadow of a tent, with the smell of grease settling into my dress. I didn't sit, not yet. I stood there, my purse still clutched against my chest, and let my eyes wander. The tent was a world apart from the garden. The ground was uneven, patched with dirt and stray blades of grass. A tray of half-prepped appetizers sat on a nearby table, the shrimp curling slightly in the heat. A fly buzzed past, landing briefly on a cutting board. I thought of the invoices I'd paid, thousands for catering alone. I'd chosen the menu myself late at night, picturing Brian's smile when he tasted the crab cakes he loved as a kid. Did he know I was here? Did Sienna? My daughter-in-law, with her perfect smile and her Pinterest boards, her vision for a wedding that was elevated, her word, not mine. She'd thanked me for the checks, always with a quick hug and a promise to make it perfect. But now, standing in this tent, I wondered what perfect meant to her. Did it include me? I took a step toward the chair, then stopped. My reflection caught in a polished steel counter nearby, distorted but clear enough. My hair was still neat, my dress still elegant, but my face looked like it belonged to someone else. Tired eyes, lips pressed tight. I didn't recognize her, this woman who'd let herself be shuffled to the back. A loud clatter broke my thoughts, a tray of glassware being unloaded. The woman in the hairnet shouted again, something about timing. I glanced toward the garden one last time. The quartet had stopped, replaced by the hum of voices, guests arriving, their laughter spilling over the hedges. I should have been out there. I should have been greeting people, smiling, holding Brian's arm as we walked through the crowd. Instead, I was here, invisible, with a folding chair waiting for me like a punishment. I took a deep breath, the air thick with the scent of onions and motor oil. My chest ached, not with sadness, not yet, but with something sharper. Doubt. Had I missed something? Had I misunderstood my place in all this? I'd given everything, my savings, my time, my heart. So why was I standing here alone while the wedding I'd built unfolded without me? And then, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife, I saw it. The cake. It was being wheeled past the tent, a towering thing of white fondant and sugar flowers gleaming in the sunlight. I'd paid for that too. I'd spent hours on the phone with the baker debating flavors, textures, designs, but as it rolled by, flanked by 2 staff members in crisp white shirts, I realized something. I hadn't been invited to the tasting, not once. Was I invisible? That's what I kept asking myself as I stood there, the kitchen tent humming around me like a machine that didn't need my presence. The air was thick with the scent of sizzling butter and something sharper, maybe bleach from the cleaning crew. My heels ached, the kind of dull throb that comes from standing too long in shoes meant for beauty, not endurance. I hadn't moved from the spot where the server had pointed, her casual gesture toward that rusted folding chair still burning in my mind. "You can wait here," she'd said, as if it were a favor. I looked at the chair again. It sat crooked against the tent's canvas wall, its metal legs speckled with rust, the cushions stained with something dark, coffee maybe, or grease. Next to it, a plastic crate overflowed with discarded vegetable peels, their edges curling in the heat. The chair wasn't just a seat, it was a statement. A place for someone who didn't matter. I felt my fingers tighten around my purse, the pearl clasp digging into my palm. I'd paid for the crystal flutes glinting in the garden, the gold-rimmed plates, the silk sashes on every guest's chair. But for me, a folding chair in the back, next to a crate of garbage. I didn't sit. Not yet. I couldn't. Sitting felt like agreeing to this, like signing a contract I hadn't read. Instead, I shifted my weight, my eyes drifting to the tent's open flap. Beyond it, the garden was alive, guests arriving in pastel dresses and tailored suits, their voices weaving into the soft hum of the quartet. I caught a glimpse of Sienna, my daughter-in-law, gliding through the crowd in a white dress that shimmered like it was woven from light. She laughed, her head tilting back, her hand resting lightly on Brian's arm. My Brian. He was smiling too, his tie perfectly knotted, his cufflinks catching the sun. He didn't look my way. Not once. A clatter behind me snapped my attention back to the tent. A young server, barely out of college, was stacking trays of appetizers, his hands moving fast, his face flushed. He glanced at me, then hesitated, like he was trying to place me. "You're with the buffet crew, right?" he asked, wiping his hands on his apron. "The cold cuts are over there if you need to start prepping." My breath caught, sharp and cold, like I'd swallowed a shard of ice. Buffet crew. The words hit harder than the first time, each syllable a small cut. I opened my mouth to correct him, to say, "I'm Evelyn, the mother of the groom," but the words stuck, heavy and useless. He was already turning away, his attention pulled to a tray of shrimp that needed rearranging. I was a ghost to him, to all of them. I pressed my lips together, tasting the faint wax of my lipstick. My heart thudded, not fast, but heavy, like it was trying to remind me I was still here. I took a step toward the chair, then stopped. My eyes landed on a tray of fluted glasses nearby, their stems delicate, their rims sparkling even in the tense dim light. I'd chosen those glasses myself, weeks ago, scrolling through vendor catalogs late at night, imagining how they'd look in the hands of guests toasting my son's happiness. I reached out, my fingers brushing one of the stems. It was cool, smooth, fragile. For a moment, I wanted to pick it up, to hold it, to walk out into the garden and raise it high, to claim my place. But I didn't. I let my hand fall, the glass untouched. "Ma'am?" Another voice, this one softer, pulled me back. A different server, a girl with a tight ponytail and tired eyes, stood a few feet away. She held a clipboard, her pen hovering over a checklist. "If you're waiting for the catering lead, she's out front, or you can sit here for now." She nodded toward the folding chair, her tone polite but clipped, like she had a dozen other tasks waiting. I stared at her, my throat tight. "I'm not with catering," I said finally, my voice low but steady. "I'm the mother of the groom." Her eyes widened just for a second before she masked it with a quick nod. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she said. But it felt rehearsed, like she'd been trained to smooth over mistakes. "It's just, we were told the family's out front. Maybe there's a mix-up." She glanced at her clipboard as if it held the answer, then back at me. "You can still wait here if you want. It's quieter." Quieter. Another word that felt like a shove, gentle but deliberate. I looked at the chair again, its sagging cushion mocking me. I imagined sitting there, my dress gathering dust, my purse balanced on my lap, while the wedding unfolded without me. I imagined Brian laughing with Sienna's parents, Sienna adjusting her veil, the guests clinking those fluted glasses I'd paid for, all of them oblivious to the woman in the back. My woman, my mother. I took a deep breath, the air heavy with the scent of roasting garlic and damp earth. My fingers brushed the snag in my dress, the tiny tear I could feel but not see. I thought of the invoices I'd paid, the late-night calls with vendors, the months of planning that had left me exhausted but hopeful. I'd done it all for Brian, for his happiness for this day. So why was I here, relegated to a corner while his new family took center stage? The server was still watching me, her clipboard clutched like a shield. I met her gaze, my voice calm but firm. "I'm not waiting here," I said. "I need to speak to someone in charge." She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, I'll find someone." She hurried off, her ponytail bouncing, leaving me alone again. I stood there, the hum of the garden growing louder, the quartet striking up a new song. I could hear Sienna's laugh, sharp and bright, cutting through the noise. I pictured her out there, radiant, in control, her vision for this day unfolding exactly as she'd planned. Had she planned this too? My place in the shadows, my name left off the program? I glanced at the folding chair one last time. It wasn't just a chair. It was a choice. Hers, Brian's, maybe even mine if I sat down. My chest tightened, a slow burn spreading through me. I'd given everything to this day, to my son, to his future. But what had I given myself? How do you vanish in a place you built? That question clawed at me as I stood just outside the kitchen tent, the gravel beneath my heels shifting with every uneasy step. The garden was in full bloom now, a sea of white chairs filled with guests in their springtime finery, their murmurs blending with the quartet's final notes. I could see the floral arch from here, its roses trembling in the breeze, each petal $1 I'd spent. I'd paid for it all, every detail, every dream, and yet I was still here on the wrong side of the hedges, my dress catching the faint tang of grease from the tent behind me. I hadn't sat in that folding chair. I couldn't, but I hadn't walked out to the garden either. My body felt caught, suspended between what I wanted to do and what I thought I should. I smoothed my chiffon dress, the pale blue fabric creased from standing too long, and tried to steady my breath. The air was warm, heavy with jasmine and the distant hum of anticipation. The ceremony was about to start. I should have been out there in the front row, my son's arm brushing mine as we shared a glance. Instead, I was here, a spectator to my own sacrifice. I thought back to the months leading up to this day. The memory came in flashes, sharp and vivid, like flipping through a ledger I hadn't balanced. I'd sat at my kitchen table, my laptop glowing in the dark, wiring payments for the venue, the catering, the DJ who promised to keep the dance floor alive. I'd spent hours choosing flowers, white roses, Sienna's favorite, because Brian said they made her smile. I'd even upgraded the bar, adding a signature cocktail Sienna had gushed about, something with elderflower and gin. Every check I wrote, every call I made, I told myself it was for them, for their happiness. But now, standing here, I wondered if it had ever been about me at all. Sienna's voice echoed in my mind, soft but calculated from one of our early planning calls. "You don't need to worry about the details, Evelyn," she'd said, her tone bright, like she was doing me a favor. "We just want everything to feel cohesive, like it all fits the vision." I'd nodded, smiling through the phone, ignoring the way her words made my stomach twist. Cohesive. Vision. Words that sounded like compliments but felt like walls, keeping me at arm's length. I'd brushed it off, told myself I was being sensitive. After all, I was the mother of the groom, the one footing the bill. My place was secure, wasn't it? A burst of laughter from the garden pulled me back. The ceremony hadn't started yet, but the crowd was settling, their voices softening as the officiant stepped forward. I edged closer to the hedge, just enough to see without being seen. Brian stood at the altar, his back straight, his hands clasped in front of him. He looked so grown, so sure, his dark suit tailored to perfection. I remembered the boy who'd clung to me during thunderstorms, his small hands gripping my sleeves. Now he was a man, and I wasn't part of this moment. Not really. I scanned the crowd, searching for my name, my place. The programs were being passed out, cream-colored cardstock with elegant cursive, just like I'd approved. A guest nearby opened one, and I strained to see. My heart sank. No mention of me. Not as the mother of the groom, not as the one who'd made this day possible. Sienna's parents were listed, their names glowing in gold ink, but mine was absent, like I'd never existed. I felt a pang, sharp and deep, like a stitch pulling loose in my chest. I'd paid for those programs, too. Another memory surfaced, unbidden, from a week after the wedding. I'd been cleaning out my email, deleting old vendor confirmations, when I found it. A forwarded message from Sienna to the wedding planner, sent by mistake. "Evelyn's covered the final deposit," it read, "so we can go ahead with the upgraded lighting. Don't worry about checking with her, just follow my lead." The words had burned into me, each one a small betrayal. I'd stared at the screen, my coffee growing cold as the truth settled in. I wasn't a partner in this. I was a resource, a checkbook to be opened and closed at their convenience. Back in the garden, the music shifted, a single violin drawing out a slow, aching note. The guests turned, their faces bright with expectation. Sienna appeared at the end of the aisle, her dress a cascade of lace, her smile radiant. I watched her glide forward, her father at her side, his arm steady under hers. I should have been out there too, sitting where mothers sit, my heart swelling as my son took his vows. Instead, I was here, my hands trembling, my purse clutched like a lifeline. A server brushed past me, carrying a tray of champagne flutes. She didn't look at me, didn't pause, just hurried toward the garden where the real celebration was unfolding. I felt the weight of it then, the full scope of what I'd lost. I'd given everything, my savings, my time, my heart to create this day. And in return, they'd erased me, tucked me away like a prop that didn't fit the scene. My chest burned, not with tears, but with something hotter, something that felt like the first ember of anger. I took a step back, my heel catching on a stone. The tent was quieter now, the staff focused on the ceremony's start. I glanced at the folding chair again, still waiting, still empty. It was more than a chair. It was a choice they'd made for me, a role they'd assigned without asking. Mother, but not really. Generous, but not acknowledged. Present, but not seen. What did they think I'd do? Sit quietly, smile, pretend this was enough? I'd spent years pretending, swallowing slights, forgiving oversights, telling myself it was for Brian, for love. But standing here, with the garden's beauty mocking me, I felt something shift. A question, small but insistent, began to form. If I'd paid for this day, if I'd built it with my own hands, why was I letting them write me out of it? Was my voice ever meant to be heard? That question gnawed at me as I stood at the edge of the garden, half hidden by the hedge that separated the kitchen tent from the reception. The air was cooler now, the spring sun dipping low, casting long shadows across the linen-draped tables. The scent of roses mingled with the sharp tang of champagne, and the quartet had given way to a band, their music pulsing through the crowd. Laughter rose and fell, glasses clinked, and I stood there, my chiffon dress wrinkled, my purse still clutched like a shield. I'd refused the folding chair, refused to be tucked away, but I hadn't found my place either. Not yet. The reception was in full swing, the kind of scene I'd pictured when I wrote the checks. Elegant, joyful, perfect. Guests milled about, their faces flushed with wine and celebration. Sienna glided between tables, her lace dress glowing under the string lights, her laughter bright and effortless. Brian was at her side, his smile wide, his hand resting lightly on her back. My son, my boy, looked so happy, so distant. I searched his face for a glance, a flicker of recognition, but his eyes never found me. It was as if I'd vanished, not just from the program, but from his world. I edged closer to the crowd, my heels sinking into the soft grass. I didn't want to be seen, not yet, but I needed to hear, to know. The band paused, and a microphone squealed briefly, cutting through the chatter. Sienna's father, a tall man with a booming voice and a navy suit, stepped forward, glass in hand. "To our beautiful daughter and her perfect match, Brian," he began, his words warm, practiced. "You've brought joy to our family, son. Welcome to the fold." The crowd cheered, glasses raised, their reflections glinting like stars. I felt a pang, sharp and familiar, but I swallowed it, my fingers tightening around my purse. Then came Sienna's mother, Claire, her voice syrupy, her pearls catching the light. "Brian, you're a gift," she said, her eyes shining with tears that felt rehearsed. "You're the son we always dreamed of having." The words landed like a blade, clean and deep. Son. They called him son, as if I hadn't spent 30 years raising him, as if I hadn't sewn his Halloween costumes, driven him to chess tournaments, worked double shifts to pay for his braces. I stood there, my breath shallow, my heart a heavy stone in my chest. The crowd clapped again, oblivious, their applause drowning out the quiet fracture inside me. I reached into my purse, my fingers brushing a folded piece of paper. My toast. I'd written it weeks ago, late at night, when the house was silent and my heart was full. I'd sat at my kitchen table, a single lamp glowing, and poured myself into those words. Memories of Brian as a boy, his gap-toothed grin, his endless questions, the way he'd hug me so tight I could barely breathe. Hopes for his future, love, strength, a life where he'd never feel alone. Gratitude for being his mother, for every moment we'd shared. I'd practiced it in front of my mirror, my voice steady, my smile real. I'd imagined standing before the crowd, my son looking at me with pride, my words binding us together one last time before he started his new life. But no one had asked for my toast. No one had mentioned a speech, a moment, a place for me. I'd hinted at it once during a planning call with Sienna. "I was thinking of saying a few words," I'd said, my voice light, careful. She'd paused, then laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Oh, Evelyn, we're keeping things tight for timing. You understand, right? It's just cleaner this way." Cleaner. Another word that felt like a wall, shutting me out. I'd nodded, told myself it was fine, that my love didn't need a microphone. But now, standing here, listening to Sienna's parents claim my son, I realized it wasn't fine. Not at all. I unfolded the paper, my hands trembling. The ink was smudged in one corner, where I'd held it too tightly. The words blurred as I read them silently, each one a memory, a piece of me. I wanted to say that you were my miracle, I'd written, that every sacrifice was worth it because you were my home. I wanted to say it out loud, to let my voice carry over the garden, to remind them, Brian, Sienna, all of them, that I was here, that I mattered. But the microphone was passed to the best man now, his jokes drawing laughter, and my moment slipped further away like sand through my fingers. I pressed the paper to my chest, the edges crinkling against my dress. The band struck up again, a slow song, and couples moved to the dance floor. I saw Brian and Sienna sway together, their faces close, their smiles private. I saw Sienna's parents join them, their arms linked, their laughter loud. I saw my absence, a hole no one noticed. The toast I'd written, the words I'd carried, felt heavy now, not with love, but with loss. I'd given everything to this day, to my son, and they'd taken it all, my money, my time, my voice, and given me nothing in return. A server passed by, offering a flute of champagne. I shook my head, my throat too tight to drink. The garden glowed under the string lights, a dream I'd paid for, but it wasn't mine. I looked down at the paper again, my toast, my heart on a page. I could have walked out there, demanded the microphone, forced them to listen. But what would that prove? That I was desperate? That I was still begging for a place they'd already denied me? No. I folded the paper and slipped it back into my purse. My chest burned, not with tears, but with something new. Anger, yes, but also clarity. I'd wanted to speak to celebrate love, but now I saw the truth. They didn't want my words, my presence, my story. They wanted my silence, my compliance, and I'd given it to them until now. What does betrayal taste like? I asked myself that as I stood at the edge of the reception, the garden now bathed in the soft gold of twilight. The air was heavy with the sweetness of roses and the faint burn of citronella from torches lit to keep the bugs away. My chiffon dress clung to my skin, damp from the evening's warmth, its pale blue faded in the shadows. My heels had long since started pinching, but I didn't care. The pain grounded me, kept me present, when all I wanted was to disappear. The crowd was gathered around the cake table, their faces lit with anticipation, their laughter a hum that drowned out the ache in my chest. I was still here, still uninvited, still erased. But something inside me was shifting, like a crack in glass before it shatters. The cake stood at the center of it all, a towering monument of white fondant and sugar roses, its tears gleaming under the string lights. I'd paid for it, $4,000, wired to a baker in the city after weeks of emails about flavors and designs. I'd wanted it to be perfect for Brian, for Sienna, for the day I thought we'd share. But as I watched them now, standing hand in hand, their smiles bright as they posed for the photographer, I realized the truth. They hadn't chosen this cake for me, or even for us. They'd chosen it for themselves, for their vision, and I'd been left out of the tasting, the planning, the joy. I remembered the call with the baker, her voice crisp and professional. "Sienna's requested lavender and lemon," she'd said. "It's her favorite." I'd paused then, my pen hovering over my notepad. Lavender and lemon. I hated lavender. It reminded me of cheap soap, of the kind my mother used when I was a child, scrubbing my hands until they were raw. I'd wanted to suggest something else, maybe vanilla or chocolate, flavors Brian loved as a boy. But I'd bitten my tongue, nodded through the phone, and said, "That sounds lovely." Lovely. Another word I'd used to smooth things over, to keep the peace, to erase myself. Now, as the crowd clapped and the photographer called for a better angle, I felt that word curdle inside me. Lovely. Nothing about this was lovely. Not the way Sienna's eyes sparkled as she fed Brian a bite of cake, her fingers lingering on his lips. Not the way Brian laughed, his head thrown back as if this moment was his alone. Not the way the guests cheered, their glasses raised, while I stood at the fringes, my purse clutched so tightly my knuckles ached. I was a ghost in my own story, and the cake, the one I'd paid for, the one I'd never taste, was the final proof. I took a step closer, drawn by some instinct I couldn't name. The grass was soft under my heels, the ground uneven, and I steadied myself, my breath shallow. The crowd parted slightly, and I caught a better view. Sienna's mother, Claire, was there, her pearls glinting as she clapped, her voice loud with praise. "Isn't it perfect?" she called to no one in particular. "Sienna has such an eye for these things." Perfect. Another word that stung, because it didn't include me. I wondered if Claire knew I'd paid for the cake, if she cared. I doubted it. To her, I was just Evelyn, the quiet woman who'd made this day possible, the one who didn't belong in the spotlight. I reached into my purse, my fingers brushing the folded toast I'd written, the one no one had let me give. The paper was warm, creased from being held too long. I didn't pull it out. I didn't need to. The words were burned into me, each one a memory of Brian, his first bike, his graduation, the way he'd call me Mama when he was scared. I'd wanted to share those words, to remind everyone that I was his mother, that I'd built this life for him, but they hadn't wanted my voice, my story. They'd wanted my money, my silence, and I'd given it to them until now. The band struck up a new song, bright and celebratory, and the crowd began to disperse, moving toward the dance floor or the bar. I stayed where I was, my eyes fixed on the cake. A server was slicing it now, her knife moving with practiced precision, the lavender scent wafting through the air. I felt a wave of nausea, not from the smell, but from the realization of how deliberate this all was. Sienna had chosen a flavor I hated, knowing I'd be there, knowing I'd paid for it. It wasn't an oversight. It was a message, one I'd been too blind to see until now. I turned away, my chest tight, and walked back toward the hedge, where the shadows were deeper, the noise softer. The kitchen tent was still there, its flaps open, the faint clatter of dishes echoing from inside. I didn't go in. I couldn't. But I needed to do something, anything, to reclaim a piece of myself. My hand slipped into my purse again, this time finding my phone. I pulled it out, the screen glowing in the dim light, and opened my contacts. The catering company's number was there, saved from months of planning. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the call button. I thought of the brunch tomorrow, the one I'd paid for too. Mimosas, live music, a spread of pastries and fruit I'd chosen to make the weekend feel complete. I pictured Sienna and Brian there, laughing with their new family, toasting their future, while I sat somewhere else, maybe in another folding chair, maybe not invited at all. The thought made my stomach twist, not with sadness, but with a clarity I hadn't felt before. I'd given them this day, this moment, this cake, but I didn't have to give them tomorrow. I pressed the call button. The line rang twice before a woman answered, her voice brisk. "Catering services, how can I help you?" I took a deep breath, the air cool against my lips, and spoke, my voice steady, calm, final. "This is Evelyn, for the brunch tomorrow. I need to cancel it, all of it, the food, the band, the cocktails, everything." There was a pause, a rustle of papers. "I'm sorry, can you confirm the event?" she asked. I did, my words clear, unyielding. "It's canceled," I repeated. "Please don't process the final payment." When I hung up, the garden seemed quieter, the music softer, as if the world had paused to catch its breath. I slipped the phone back into my purse, my hands no longer trembling. The crowd was still dancing, the cake still being served, but I felt different. Not lighter, not yet, but sharper, like a blade finding its edge. I looked back at the cake table, at the slices being passed around, the lavender scent lingering in the air. They could have their cake, their moment, their vision, but I was done building their world at the cost of my own. I took a step away from the hedge, my heels steady now, my dress catching the faint glow of the string lights. The crack inside me wasn't a break. It was an opening, a space where something new could grow. I didn't know what it was yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't giving them another piece of me. Not tomorrow, not ever. What do you do when the ground beneath you shifts? That's what I kept asking myself as I sat in my living room, the house so quiet I could hear the tick of the clock on the mantel. The wedding was over, the guests gone, the garden dismantled. My chiffon dress hung in the closet, its pale blue fabric still carrying the faint scent of grease and roses. My purse sat on the coffee table, its pearl clasp glinting in the lamplight, a reminder of the day I'd been erased. I'd canceled the brunch, pulled the plug on their perfect morning, but the victory felt hollow. The anger that had fueled me in the garden had cooled, leaving behind a heaviness I couldn't name. It wasn't grief, not yet. It was something deeper, something that made my hands tremble as I reached for the drawer in the side table. The drawer stuck, as it always did, its wood swollen from years of humidity. I tugged harder, my nails catching on the handle, and it gave way with a groan. Inside was a mess of forgotten things. Old receipts, a broken pen, a faded photo of Brian at his high school graduation, his smile wide and unguarded. I pushed them aside, my fingers searching for something I'd buried long ago, something I hadn't wanted to face. A letter. I'd seen it years ago, after Martin's death, tucked in a box of his things I'd never fully unpacked. I'd glanced at the envelope then, its edges yellowed, his handwriting unmistakable, and shoved it away. It had felt like a ghost I wasn't ready to meet. But tonight, with the wedding's wounds still raw, I needed answers, even if they hurt. I found it at the bottom, folded inside a manila folder, its paper brittle under my touch. The envelope was heavy, not with weight, but with meaning. Evelyn, it read in Martin's slanted script, the ink faded but legible. My heart thudded, slow and deliberate, like a drum in a funeral march. I turned it over, my thumb brushing the flap, still sealed after all these years. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thick with the scent of dust and old wood. I sat back on the couch, the cushions sinking under me, and stared at the letter. What could Martin possibly say that mattered now? He'd left us, me and Brian, decades ago, his absence a wound I'd learned to live with, but the wedding, the betrayal, the way Brian had let me be pushed aside, had stirred something in me. I needed to know why I was always the one left behind. I slid my finger under the flap, the paper tearing with a soft, final sound. The letter unfolded in my hands, its creases deep, its edges stained with faint yellow spots, like tears that had dried long ago. Martin's handwriting filled the page, uneven, as if he'd written in a hurry. "Evelyn," it began. "I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I can't take this to my grave. You deserve the truth, even if it's too late." My breath caught, sharp and cold, like I'd stepped into a winter wind. The truth. What truth? I leaned forward, the lamp casting a warm circle around me, and read on, my eyes tracing each word as if it might vanish. "Brian isn't ours," he wrote. "Not yours, not mine. He was born to a woman I knew before we married, a woman who couldn't keep him. She left him with me, and I couldn't let him go. I told you he was mine, a mistake from before us, but that was a lie. He's not my son either. I gave him to you, Evelyn, because I knew you'd love him better than anyone else could, and you did. God, you did." The words blurred, not from tears, but from the way my hands shook, the paper trembling like a leaf in a storm. I read it again, then a third time, each sentence a hammer against the life I'd built. Brian wasn't mine. Not by blood, not by accident, not by anything except choice. A choice Martin had made for me, without my knowledge 30 years ago. I'd raised him, loved him, sacrificed for him, believing he was my son. Every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every night I'd stayed up worrying. He was mine in every way that mattered. But now, this letter, this truth, stripped that away, leaving me raw and exposed. I set the letter down, my fingers numb, and stared at the coffee table. The clock ticked louder now, each second a reminder of the life I'd lived, the lie I'd carried. I saw Brian as a baby, his tiny fists curling against my chest as I rocked him to sleep. I saw him at 10, his eyes bright as he unwrapped the bike I'd saved 6 months to buy. I saw him at 18, hugging me before he left for college, his voice thick with gratitude. "You're the best, Mom," he'd said. Mom. That word had defined me, shaped me, given me purpose, and now it felt like a costume I'd worn without knowing it didn't fit. I stood, my legs unsteady, and walked to the window. The night outside was still, the streetlights casting long shadows across my lawn. My reflection stared back at me, faint in the glass, a woman with graying hair, tired eyes, and a face that looked older than it had yesterday. I pressed my hand to the pane, the glass cool against my palm, and let the truth settle. Martin had lied. He'd given me a child who wasn't mine, and I'd loved him with everything I had. But Brian, he'd let me be pushed aside, let Sienna erase me from his wedding, let his new family claim him as their own. Was it because he'd always known deep down that I wasn't his real mother? Or was it simpler, crueler, that he didn't care? I turned back to the letter, still open on the couch, its words a wound I couldn't close. "I'm sorry," Martin had written at the end. "You were the strongest person I ever knew. You still are. Sorry." The word was useless, a bandage on a broken bone. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but my eyes were dry, my chest tight with something else, clarity maybe, or resolve. I'd loved Brian without condition, without question, but that love hadn't been enough to keep me in his life. Not as his mother, not as anything. I picked up the letter, my fingers tracing the yellowed edges. The paper smelled faintly of mildew, of time forgotten. I could burn it, tear it, bury it again, but what would that change? The truth was out now, a crack in the foundation of my life. I thought of the brunch I'd canceled, the first act of defiance I'd allowed myself. It had felt powerful, but this truth was something else. It wasn't just about the wedding, or Sienna, or Brian's silence. It was about me, about the woman I'd been, the mother I'd become, and the lies I'd lived for. I sat back down, the couch creaking under me, and folded the letter carefully, slipping it back into the envelope. My hands were steady now, my breath even. The crack inside me wasn't a collapse, it was a doorway. I'd given Brian everything, but I didn't owe him my silence, my pain, my erasure. Not anymore. How much does love weigh when it's unreturned? That question hung over me like a shadow as I sat at my kitchen table, the morning light streaming through the window, painting the room in soft golds and pinks. The house was quiet, save for the faint drip of the coffee maker and the occasional chirp of a sparrow outside. My hands rested on the table, fingers tracing the grain of the wood, worn smooth from years of use. The letter from Martin lay folded in its envelope, tucked under a stack of bills, but its words were alive in me, sharp and unyielding. Brian wasn't mine, not by blood, not by fate. I'd raised him, loved him, built my life around him, and now in the wake of the wedding's betrayal, I needed to understand what that love had cost me. I stood, my bare feet cold against the linoleum floor, and walked to the sink. The dishes from last night's solitary dinner, a bowl, a spoon, a chipped mug, sat unwashed, their edges crusted with remnants of soup. I turned on the faucet, the water hissing as it filled the basin, and let my hands sink into the warmth. The soap smelled of lemon, sharp and clean, a contrast to the heaviness in my chest. As I scrubbed, my mind wandered, pulling up memories like receipts from a life I hadn't audited. I needed to see it all, to lay it out, to know what I'd given and what had been taken. I thought of the first time I'd held Brian, a squirming bundle in a hospital blanket, his tiny face red from crying. Martin had been there, his eyes distant, his hands shoved in his pockets. "He's ours," he'd said. And I'd believed him, my heart swelling with a love so fierce it scared me. I'd spent that night in a rocking chair, Brian asleep against my chest, his breath soft and uneven. I'd whispered promises to him, safety, warmth, a life where he'd never feel alone. I didn't know then that he wasn't mine, that Martin's lie would shape us both. But I'd kept those promises, every one, even when it meant breaking myself. I rinsed the bowl, the water swirling down the drain, and remembered the bike. Brian was 7, his eyes wide as he pointed to a red Schwinn in the store window. its handlebars gleaming with streamers. "Can I have it, Mama?" he'd asked, his voice trembling with hope. I'd smiled, said, "We'll see," knowing my bank account was stretched thin. I took extra shifts at the hospital, skipped meals to save pennies, and bought that bike, wrapping it in a tarp for his birthday. His laugh when he saw it high and bright had been worth every ache in my bones. I'd watched him ride it down the street, wobbling at first, then steady, his small hands gripping the bars. I'd thought, this is enough. This is everything. I dried my hands on a dish towel, its edges frayed from years of use, and walked to the living room. The walls were lined with photos: Brian at his first soccer game, his jersey too big, Brian at prom, his tie crooked, Brian at graduation, his cap tilted just so. I'd hung each one with care, a gallery of moments that defined me as his mother. But now, as I looked at them, they felt like artifacts of a debt I'd never collect. I'd given him those moments, those years, and he'd let me be pushed aside at his wedding, let Sienna erase me, let his new family claim him without a word. I sat on the couch, the cushions sagging under me, and pulled a notebook from the coffee table. It was old, its cover faded, the kind I'd used to jot down grocery lists or reminders. I opened it to a blank page, the paper crisp under my fingers, and picked up a pen. I needed to write it down, to make it real, an inventory of invisible love, a tally of what I'd given that no one had seen. I started with the small things, the nights I'd stayed up sewing patches on his jeans, my fingers pricked by the needle, my eyes burning from fatigue. The mornings I'd driven him to school in the rain, my old car rattling, the heater barely working just so he wouldn't miss a test. The birthday cakes I'd baked, lopsided but made with care, their frosting smeared from his eager fingers. I wrote faster, the pen scratching against the page as bigger moments surfaced. The summer I'd worked double shifts to pay for his chess camp, coming home so tired I'd fallen asleep in my scrubs. The college applications I'd helped him write, sitting at this very table, my coffee cold as we polished every word. The car I'd bought him when he got his license, a used hatchback I'd haggled for, knowing it meant I'd skip replacing my own leaking roof. Each memory was a thread, woven into the tapestry of my life, a life I'd shaped around being his mother. But now, with Martin's letter burning in my mind, I saw them differently. They weren't just gifts. They were sacrifices, unpaid, unacknowledged, a ledger of love that had bankrupted me. I paused, my hand cramping, and looked out the window. The roses in my garden were in full bloom, their petals bright against the green, a reminder of the care I'd poured into this home. I thought of the wedding again, of the cake I hadn't tasted, the toast I hadn't given, the folding chair I'd refused to sit in. I'd canceled the brunch, taken back one piece of what I'd given, but it wasn't enough, not when I knew the truth. Brian wasn't mine, not by blood, and maybe not by heart either. He'd chosen Sienna, her family, their vision, over me. He'd let me be erased, and that hurt more than Martin's lie ever could. I stood, the notebook still open, and walked to the wall of photos. My fingers brushed the frame of Brian's graduation picture, the glass cool under my touch. I lifted it down, then another, then a third, each one a weight in my hands. I didn't throw them away, didn't smash them. I set them gently on the floor, face down, their absence leaving pale patches on the wall. It wasn't anger driving me, not exactly. It was clarity, a need to let go of the version of myself that had lived for him, that had believed love was enough to earn a place. I'd loved him without condition, without truth, and it had cost me everything, my savings, my voice, my place in his life. I sat back down, the room quieter now, the photos gone, the walls bare. The notebook lay open, its pages filled with my inventory, a map of invisible love. I added one last line, my pen steady. I gave you a life, but you didn't give me one back. I closed the notebook, the sound sharp in the silence, and felt a shift inside me. The question wasn't what I'd given anymore, it was what I'd take back, what I'd build for myself now that I knew the truth. Could a knock on the door feel like a judgment? That's what I wondered as I stood in my hallway, the sound echoing through the house, sharp and insistent. The morning was quiet, the kind of quiet that settles after a storm, with sunlight spilling through the windows, catching dust motes in the air. My bare feet pressed against the cool hardwood, grounding me as I stared at the door. I knew it was Brian before I saw him. I could feel it, the weight of his presence, the unspoken questions, the tension that had been building since I'd canceled the brunch, since I'd read Martin's letter, since I'd taken down his photos from my walls. I smoothed my sweater, a soft gray one I'd worn for comfort, and took a deep breath. The air smelled faintly of coffee and the lavender I'd hated since the wedding cake. I didn't flinch. I was ready. I opened the door slowly, the hinges creaking, and there he was. Brian, my son who wasn't my son, stood on the porch, his shoulders hunched, his face drawn. He wore a wrinkled t-shirt and jeans, a far cry from the tailored suit of his wedding day. His eyes, so like the boy I'd raised, were shadowed with fatigue, maybe anger. "Mom," he said, his voice low, uncertain, like he was testing the word. I didn't respond, didn't smile, didn't step aside to let him in. I just stood there, my hand on the doorknob, my gaze steady. The morning breeze rustled the roses in my garden, their petals bright against the green, a reminder of the life I'd built without him. "Why did you do it?" he asked, his words sharp, cutting through the silence. "The brunch, the band, the bar. Why did you cancel everything? You made a scene, Mom. Everyone's talking about it." His voice rose, not loud but tight, like a string pulled too taut. I felt a flicker of something, hurt maybe, or the ghost of the mother I'd been. But it passed quickly, replaced by a calm I hadn't known I possessed. I looked at him, really looked, and saw a man who didn't know me, not anymore. Not the woman who'd sewn his costumes, paid for his dreams, loved him through a lie. He saw a problem to be fixed, not a mother to be heard. "Come inside," I said, my voice even, and stepped back, letting the door swing open. He hesitated, his jaw tight, then walked past me, his sneakers scuffing the floor. The house felt smaller with him in it, the air heavier. I closed the door, the click loud in the silence, and gestured to the armchair across from the couch. "Sit," I said. Not a request, but a command. He obeyed, sinking into the chair, his hands clasped between his knees. I sat on the couch, my posture straight, my hands folded in my lap. The coffee table between us was bare except for a small wooden box, its lid closed, its contents waiting. I studied him, the lines of his face, the way his shoulders slumped. He was 30 now, a man, but I saw traces of the boy, the way his brow furrowed when he was upset, the way his fingers twitched like they wanted to hold something. I remembered those hands as a child's, sticky with ice cream, clutching mine when he was scared. I'd thought those moments bound us, that they'd earned me a place in his life. But the wedding had shown me otherwise. He'd let Sienna push me aside, let her family claim him, let me be erased. And now, with Martin's letter burning in my mind, I knew why it hurt so much. He wasn't mine, not by blood, but I'd made him mine by choice. And he'd chosen to forget that. "Why, Mom?" he asked again, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "You embarrassed us. Sienna's furious. Her parents think you're petty. I don't get it. What were you trying to prove?" His words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they were blind. He didn't see me, didn't see the folding chair, the missing toast, the cake I hadn't tasted. He saw his wedding, his wife, his new life, and I was just a glitch in the story. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on his. "You don't get it," I said, my voice low, steady, "because you didn't look." He blinked, confused, but I didn't pause. "I paid for your wedding, Brian. Every rose, every glass, every note of music. I gave you everything, my savings, my time, my heart. And you let them put me in a kitchen tent, let them erase my name, let them call you their son while I stood in the shadows." My words were calm, but they carried weight, each one a stone laid between us. He shifted, his hands unclasping, his eyes darting to the floor. "I didn't know it was like that," he mumbled. "Sienna said it was for the photos, for the look. I thought you were okay with it." His excuse hung in the air, flimsy, like a paper shield. I laughed, a short, cold sound that made him flinch. "You thought," I said, "because you didn't ask. You didn't think about me at all." I reached for the wooden box on the table, my movements deliberate, and opened it. Inside were the receipts, dozens of them, neatly folded, each one a record of what I'd given. Venue deposits, catering contracts, florist invoices, all marked with my name, my sacrifices, and on top, Martin's letter, its yellowed envelope stark against the white paper. I pulled them out, the receipts first, and set them in front of him. "This is what I paid," I said. "Not just money, Brian, years, love, everything I had." He stared at the pile, his hands still, his face pale. Then I placed the letter beside it, my fingers lingering on the envelope. "And this," I said, "is what I learned." He looked at it, then at me, his brow furrowing. I didn't explain, didn't soften it. I pushed the letter toward him, my voice firm. "Read it." He hesitated, his fingers hovering, then took the envelope, his movements slow, like he sensed the weight of what was inside. He opened it, the paper crinkling, and unfolded the letter. I watched his face as he read, saw the confusion give way to shock, then disbelief. His eyes flicked to me, wide, searching. This says I'm not—" His voice broke, trailing off. He swallowed, tried again. "You knew?" "I know now," I said, my voice steady, unyielding. "I'm not angry because you're not my blood, Brian. I'm angry because I raised you, gave you everything, and when the moment came to honor me, you sat down. You let them humiliate me, and you said nothing. That's what broke me. Not your DNA, your choice." He looked down, his hands trembling, the letter slipping to his lap. "I didn't mean to," he whispered. "I didn't think it would hurt you." His words were small, inadequate, and I felt no urge to comfort him. I stood, walked to the mantel where the frames used to be, and picked up an empty one, its glass cold in my hands. "This held your kindergarten photo," I said, turning it over. "You had a missing tooth, marker on your shirt. You ran to me after the ceremony, straight into my arms." I set it face down, the clink loud in the silence. "I'm done holding on to a version of you that doesn't exist." He flinched, his jaw tight, his eyes wet. "Mom, I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely audible. But it was too late, and we both knew it. I walked back to the table, closed the box, and handed it to him. "These are yours now," I said. "The receipts, the letter, the truth. Take them." He took the box, his hands shaking, and stood, his movements slow, like he was carrying a weight he couldn't name. I walked him to the door, my steps steady, my heart calm. He paused at the threshold, looking back, searching for a crack in my resolve. "You always said I was your whole world," he said quietly. "You were," I replied, my voice clear. "And now I'm mine." I closed the door, the sound final, and stood in the silence, stronger than I'd ever been. What does it mean to belong to yourself? That question lingered as I stood in my kitchen, the evening light filtering through the curtains, casting long shadows across the counter. The house was still, the kind of stillness that feels like a gift after chaos. My bare feet pressed against the cool linoleum, grounding me as I moved, my hands steady, purposeful. The air smelled of rosemary and garlic, a warmth that wrapped around me like a promise. For the first time in years, I was cooking for myself. Not for Brian, not for a family that didn't see me, but for Evelyn, the woman I was learning to know again. The wedding was gone, the letter read, the truth spoken. Now it was time to claim something back. I'd spent the week since Brian's visit in a quiet kind of reconstruction. The walls, once lined with his photos, stayed bare, their pale patches like scars that were healing. The notebook where I'd written my inventory of invisible love sat closed on the shelf, its pages a record I no longer needed to revisit. I'd given Brian the box of receipts, Martin's letter, the weight of our shared past, and when he'd walked out my door, I'd felt lighter, not because I'd lost him, but because I'd found something else, myself, or the beginnings of her. Tonight, I was sealing that discovery with a dinner that was mine alone. I set the table carefully, my movements deliberate, almost ritualistic. The tablecloth was one I'd bought years ago, white with faint blue flowers, tucked away for special occasions that never came. I smoothed it out, my fingers lingering on the soft cotton, its edges slightly frayed from time. I chose a single plate, the good china I'd inherited from my mother, its rim painted with delicate vines. One fork, one knife, one glass. simple, but each piece chosen with care, like I was building a shrine to my own worth. The napkin I folded neatly, its crisp edges a contrast to the chaos of the wedding, the folding chair, the cake I hadn't tasted. I turned to the stove where a small pot simmered, the aroma of roasted vegetables and herbs filling the room. I'd decided on a dish I loved, ratatouille, bright with tomatoes, zucchini, and eggplant, each slice arranged in a spiral, a labor of love for myself. I'd never made it for Brian. He'd preferred simpler things, burgers or pasta, and I'd always obliged, shaping my meals around his tastes. But tonight, there was no one to please but me. I stirred the sauce, the wooden spoon warm in my hand, and let the act of cooking ground me. The sizzle of onions, the soft pop of a tomato bursting, the rhythm of chopping, they were a language I was relearning, one that spoke of care without sacrifice. As the dish baked, I poured myself a glass of wine, a Merlot I'd bought on impulse, its deep red catching the light. I swirled it gently, watching the liquid cling to the glass, and thought of the wedding, of the champagne flutes I'd chosen but never held. I'd stood at the edges then, my hands empty, my heart heavy. Now my hand was full, the glass cool against my palm, and the weight in my chest was gone, replaced by something softer, something mine. I took a sip, the wine sharp and warm, and let it linger on my tongue. It wasn't about the taste, it was about the choice, the act of claiming a moment for myself. I sat at the table, the chair creaking faintly, and looked at the place I'd set. It was beautiful in its simplicity, a stark contrast to the wedding's extravagance, the tables draped in linen I'd paid for, the roses I'd never touched. I remembered the kitchen tent, the folding chair, the way I'd been shuffled aside, and felt a flicker of anger, but it passed quickly. That wasn't my story anymore. I'd written a new chapter, one where I didn't need a crowd, a microphone, a son's approval to feel whole. I'd given Brian the truth, let him carry the weight of Martin's letter, and in doing so, I'd freed myself from the role I'd played for too long, mother, giver, shadow. The oven timer dinged, a soft chime that broke the silence. I stood, slipped on an oven mitt, and pulled out the ratatouille, its colors vibrant, its scent rich and comforting. I set it on the table, the dish steaming gently, and served myself a portion, the vegetables soft and warm on my plate. I took a bite, the flavors bright and layered, and closed my eyes, savoring it. This was what I'd been missing. Not just the food, but the act of nourishing myself, of choosing myself without apology. I'd spent years feeding others, building their dreams, and now, in this quiet kitchen, I was building my own. I thought of Brian, of the way he'd looked when I handed him the letter, his face crumpling under the weight of the truth. I wondered where he was now, what he was doing with the box of receipts, the knowledge that he wasn't mine by blood. Part of me wanted to call him, to ask if he was okay, to slip back into the role of mother, comforter, fixer, but I didn't. I took another bite, the fork steady in my hand, and let that urge pass. He had his life, his choices, his new family, and I had this table, this meal, this moment that no one could take from me. The wine glass caught the light again, its reflection dancing on the tablecloth. I thought of the toast I'd written, the one I'd never given, its words folded away in my purse. I didn't need it anymore. That toast was for a version of me who believed love had to be spoken, seen, returned. This dinner was my toast, silent but powerful, a declaration that I was enough. I'd loved Brian without condition, raised him through a lie, and he'd let me be erased. But I wasn't erased now. I was here, in my kitchen, my home, my life, and it was mine to shape. I finished the meal slowly, each bite a reminder of what I'd reclaimed. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty. It was full of me, my choices, my strength, my future. I cleared the table, washing the plate by hand, the warm water soothing against my skin. I dried it carefully, placed it back in the cabinet, and stood for a moment, my hands resting on the counter. The roses outside glowed in the fading light, their petals soft and resilient, like the woman I was becoming. What does freedom feel like when you've carried someone else's story for so long? I pondered that as I stood in my garden, the late afternoon sun warm on my face, the roses in full bloom around me. Their petals were soft, vibrant, their scent clean and sharp, no longer tainted by the memory of the wedding. My hands, dusted with soil from pruning, felt strong, capable, as if they'd remembered how to build something for me alone. The house behind me was quiet, its walls still bare where Brian's photos once hung, but the emptiness wasn't loss. It was space, room for the woman I was becoming. I'd confronted Brian, given him the truth of Martin's letter, and reclaimed my dinner, my voice. Now it was time to face Sienna, the architect of my erasure, and close the chapter for good. I wiped my hands on my jeans, the denim soft against my skin, and walked inside, the screen door creaking as it closed. The kitchen smelled faintly of lemon from the dish soap I'd used that morning, a scent that grounded me, reminded me of the dinner I'd made for myself, the table I'd set for one. I sat at the counter, my laptop open, its screen glowing in the dim light. I'd arranged to meet Sienna at a cafe downtown, a neutral place, not my home, not hers. I didn't want her in my space, not after she'd orchestrated my exclusion from the wedding, from Brian's life. This wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity, about saying what I needed to say, not for her, but for me. The cafe was small, tucked between a bookstore and a bakery, its windows fogged with steam from the espresso machine. I arrived early, as always, and chose a table by the window, the wooden chair sturdy under me. My sweater, a soft cream knit, felt like armor, its sleeves pushed up to my elbows. I ordered a coffee, black, its bitterness a match for the resolve in my chest. The cup was warm in my hands, its ceramic smooth, and I sipped slowly, watching the door. The street outside buzzed with life, people hurrying past, their bags swinging, their voices muffled. I felt apart from them, anchored in this moment, ready for what was coming. Sienna arrived on time, her steps quick, her blonde hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She wore a tailored coat, her heels clicking on the floor, and her face was composed, but her eyes betrayed her, nervous, searching. She spotted me and hesitated, then walked over, her smile tight, practiced. "Evelyn," she said, her voice bright but strained, like she was trying to keep things light. "Thanks for meeting me." I nodded, gesturing to the chair across from me, my expression calm, unyielding. She sat, her hands folding on the table, her nails perfectly manicured, a contrast to the dirt still under mine. I didn't waste time. "I'm here because I need to say something," I began, my voice low, steady, each word deliberate. "You planned a wedding I paid for, Sienna. Every detail, every flower, every glass, I made it happen. And you pushed me aside, put me in a tent, erased my name, let your family claim my son. You didn't just exclude me, you humiliated me, and I let you because I thought love meant staying quiet. I was wrong." My words were clear, not loud, but heavy, like stones dropped into still water. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on hers. "I'm not invisible anymore, not to you, not to Brian, not to myself." Her face paled, her lips parting as if to speak, but I held up a hand silencing her. "I'm not done," I said. "I raised Brian, loved him, gave him everything, even when I didn't know he wasn't mine. I thought that earned me a place, but you showed me it didn't. So I'm taking my place now, not in your life, but in mine. I don't need your approval, your gratitude, or your apologies. I just needed you to hear me." I sat back, my coffee cup cool now, my hands steady in my lap. The air between us was thick, charged, but I felt light, unburdened. Sienna swallowed, her eyes darting to the table, then back to me. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, her voice soft, almost pleading. "It was about the aesthetic, the flow. I thought you'd understand." Her words were flimsy, rehearsed, the same excuses Brian had offered. I didn't flinch, didn't soften. "You thought," I said, "because you didn't care to ask. That's the difference between us, Sienna. I cared and I paid for it. You didn't and you won't." She looked away, her fingers twisting together, her composure cracking. "I'm sorry," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "If I could go back, I'd do it differently." I studied her, searching for sincerity, but it didn't matter. Her apology was a gesture, not a bridge. I stood, my chair scraping softly against the floor, and picked up my purse. "Keep your sorry," I said, my voice calm, final. "I don't need it anymore." I walked out, the bell above the door chiming as I left, the street air cool against my face. I didn't look back. A week later, a message appeared in my inbox, Sienna's name in bold. "Evelyn," it read, "I've been thinking about what you said. I was wrong and I'm truly sorry. I hope we can talk again, find a way forward. Brian misses you." I sat at my desk, the room quiet, the roses outside glowing in the dusk. I read it again, her words polite, careful, but they felt weightless, like petals falling from a flower already wilted. I thought of the wedding, the tent, the cake, the letter, the dinner I'd made for myself. I'd spent years carrying their story, their needs, their vision, but I was done. I was my own vision now. I hovered over the reply button, my finger steady, then moved to delete. The message vanished, the screen empty, the silence full. I didn't feel anger, didn't feel loss. I felt complete, like a circle closed, a story finished. Sienna's words didn't matter, not because they weren't true, but because they couldn't change me anymore. I'd spoken my truth, not for her, not for Brian, but for the woman who'd stood in that garden invisible and walked away whole. What does it mean to be your own hero? That question bloomed inside me as I stood in my kitchen, the morning light streaming through the window, bathing the room in a golden glow. The air was warm, fragrant with the scent of fresh bread rising in the oven, its crust just beginning to brown. My hands, dusted with flour, moved with a rhythm I'd come to love, kneading dough on the counter, the surface worn smooth from years of use. I wore an apron, simple cotton, its ties knotted firmly at my waist, its pockets heavy with a wooden spoon and a recipe card I no longer needed. This was my kingdom now, not the garden of a wedding I'd paid for, not the shadows of a life I'd let others define. Here in this quiet space, I was the queen, and I'd crowned myself. The months since my confrontation with Sienna had been a slow, deliberate rebuilding. I deleted her message, let go of Brian's absence, and turned inward, not to hide, but to grow. The walls of my home, once bare where his photos hung, now held new things: a watercolor of roses I'd painted myself, a shelf of cookbooks I'd collected, a mirror that reflected a woman I recognized, her eyes bright, her smile unforced. My garden flourished outside, the roses fuller than ever, their petals a testament to the care I'd poured into myself. I'd faced the truth of Martin's letter, the betrayal of the wedding, the silence of my son, and I'd emerged not broken, but whole, stronger than I'd ever been.